Captain Jake Morrison watched the stars through the main window of his ship, the New Horizon. He had been exploring space for 15 years, but the sight still made him feel amazed. Out here, 3 days away from Earth's nearest colony, everything was quiet and peaceful. "Captain," called his communications officer, "we're getting some strange readings on the long-range scanner." Jake walked over to look at the screen. 3 large objects were moving toward them from the outer edge of the star system. They were big, much bigger than any human ship he had ever seen. "Are they ours?" Jake asked. "No, sir. The computer doesn't recognize the design. They're not in our database." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Humans had been traveling between stars for almost 50 years, but they had never met another intelligent species. They had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it looked like they might get their answer. "Send them a greeting message," Jake ordered. "Use the standard first contact protocol." The message went out into space. Jake and his crew waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. No answer came back. "Sir," the scanner operator said, his voice worried, "the 3 ships are getting closer, and there are more of them behind those first." 3, a lot more. Jake looked at the screen again. What had been 3 dots was now a small fleet. At least 20 ships, all heading toward the human colonies. "Try the message again," Jake said. Maybe they didn't understand it the first time. But before they could send another message, something happened that changed everything. The 3 lead ships fired weapons at a cargo ship that was carrying supplies to the mining colony on Kepler 442b. The cargo ship, the Lucky Strike, simply disappeared in a flash of light. "My God," whispered Jake's first officer, Amy Brooks. "They just destroyed them. No warning, no communication. They just killed everyone on that ship." Jake's hands shook as he grabbed the communication controls. "This is Captain Morrison to all ships in the area. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Repeat, we are under attack. All civilian ships retreat to safe distance immediately." But it was too late for many of them. The alien ships moved with deadly purpose. They destroyed another cargo ship, then a small passenger transport. 15 people died in seconds. "Captain, we need to run," Amy said. "Our ship wasn't built for fighting. We have no weapons that can hurt ships that big." Jake knew she was right, but he couldn't just leave. More human ships were in the area. Someone had to warn Earth. "Get me a clear scan of those ships first," he ordered. "We need to know what we're dealing with." The science officer worked quickly. "Got it, sir. Downloading all data now. These ships are ... incredible. Their technology is way ahead of ours. The energy readings are off the charts." One of the alien ships turned toward the New Horizon. Jake could see it clearly now. It was dark and sharp, like a giant knife flying through space. Strange symbols glowed along its hull. "That's enough," Jake said. "Everyone hold on. We're getting out of here." The New Horizon turned and ran. Behind them, the alien ships continued their attack. More human ships died. Jake watched his scanner as each friendly dot disappeared from the screen. 3 days later, Jake's ship arrived at Earth. He went straight to Defense Command Headquarters and met with Admiral Lisa Carter. 23 ships destroyed, Jake reported. Over 200 people dead. They didn't try to talk to us. They didn't ask us to surrender. They just started killing. Admiral Carter studied the data from Jake's ship. She was a small woman, but everyone in the military respected her sharp mind and calm nature. "These weapon signatures," she said, "they're like nothing we've ever seen. And look at the size of their ships. Some of them are bigger than our space stations." "Admiral," Jake said, "there's more." Our long-range scanners picked up additional ships behind the first wave. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The room went quiet. Admiral Carter looked at the star maps on the wall. "They're coming here," she sighed. This wasn't just an attack on our outer colonies. This was a test. They wanted to see what we could do. And now they know we can't do much. Jake's first officer, Amy, said Dr. Sam Rodriguez, the head scientist, spoke up. "I've been studying the weapon energy signatures. These aliens, whoever they are, they've done this before. Many times. Their technology is too perfect, too efficient. They know exactly how to destroy ships and kill people quickly." Admiral Carter nodded. "Which means they've probably conquered other species before us." As if to prove her point, a communication came in from the outer colonies. The message was short and terrifying. "This is War Commander Zackville of the Kethver Empire," said a deep, alien voice. "Soft-flesh humans of the small blue world. We have seen your pathetic defense attempts. You are weak. Your technology is primitive. Your species will serve the Empire or be destroyed." The message continued. "You have 7 of your solar cycles to surrender, all military forces, and prepare your worlds for occupation. Resist, and we will burn your cities and take your survivors as slaves. This is the only warning you will receive." The communication ended. The room stayed silent for a long moment. "Well," Admiral Carter said finally, "I guess we have our answer about whether we're alone in the universe." Jake looked out the window at Earth, beautiful and blue below them. Somewhere, out there in the dark, an empire of killers was coming for his home. "What do we do?" Amy asked. Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the tactical display. "We do what humans have always done when someone tries to destroy us," she said. "We fight back." But looking at the data from Jake's encounter, everyone in the room wondered if fighting would be enough. The Kethver Empire had technology that was centuries ahead of Earth's. They had experience conquering worlds. They had ships that could destroy human vessels with single shots. 7 days, Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "They're giving us 7 days to surrender. Then we'd better use those 7 days well, Admiral." Carter replied. She turned to address the room. "I want every ship we have ready for combat. Contact all the colonies. Tell them to prepare their defenses. And get our best military minds working on strategy." Jake raised his hand. "Admiral, I volunteer to go back out there. Someone needs to keep watching them, see what they're planning." "Absolutely not," Admiral Carter said. "You've done enough. We need you here to help plan our defense." But Jake was already thinking about the Lucky Strike and all the other ships that had died. The Kethvar thought humans were weak. They thought this would be easy. Maybe they were right. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him about the old war zone, Earth. It's not the size of the dog in the fight that matters. It's the size of the fight in the dog. The Kethver Empire was about to learn what kind of fight humans had in them. War Commander Zackville stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Edge. Around him, his crew prepared for what should be the easiest conquest in the Empire's history. The humans had not responded to his surrender demand. 7 days had passed, and now it was time to show them the price of defiance. "Sub-Commander Veltar," Zackville called to his second-in-command, "report on the human defensive positions." Veltar looked at his data screen. "War Commander, they have gathered. Their ships at something called Titan Station. It orbits their largest planet. 43 vessels total." Zackville laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 43 ships? We have over 300 in this fleet alone. This will be over in minutes. The Kethver had conquered 17 different species over the past 1,000 years. Each time, it had been the same story. The prey species would panic, try to negotiate, and put up a weak fight before surrendering. The humans would be no different. At Titan Station, Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks checked her fighters' weapons for the third time. She was leading a squadron of 12 ships against an enemy that outnumbered them 8-1. The math was, "Not good, Gold Squadron. This is Gold Leader," she said into her radio. "Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to buy time for the evacuation ships to get away from Earth." "Copy that, Gold Leader?" came the reply from her pilots. Amy could hear the fear in their voices, but also determination. They all knew this was probably a one-way mission. Admiral Carter watched from the command center as the HFY fleet approached. Each enemy ship was massive, bristling with weapons. The human fleet looked like toys beside them. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter," she broadcast. "Today, we face an enemy that thinks we're weak. They think we'll break and run at the first sign of trouble. Let's show them what humans are really made of." The HFY reached weapon range first. Their energy beams lanced out, precise and deadly. 3 human ships exploded immediately. But then something happened that surprised Zak Thul. Instead of retreating, the human ships charged forward. Not in formation, not following any tactical pattern he recognized, but in a wild, desperate rush. "What are they doing?" Veltar asked. One human ship, badly damaged and losing air, flew straight at a HFY cruiser. At the last second, the human ship's engines exploded, ramming into the enemy vessel. Both ships were destroyed. "They're using suicide attacks," Zak Thul said, his voice showing the first hint of uncertainty. Amy Brooks led her fighters in a weaving pattern between the large ships. Her fighters were small and fast, but their weapons could barely scratch. The HFY armor. "Gold 3, Gold 7, follow me," she called. "We're going to hit that command ship." "Gold Leader, our missiles won't hurt that thing," one of her pilots replied. "We're not using missiles," Amy said. "We're using ourselves." She dove her fighter toward the bridge of a HFY ship, firing all her weapons. At the last moment, she pulled up and away, but not before launching her fighter's emergency beacon directly at the enemy's sensor array. The beacon exploded on contact. It wasn't designed as a weapon, but the explosion confused the ship's targeting systems long. Enough for 2 human cruisers to get close and fire their main guns. Colonel Pete Williams watched the space battle from Earth's surface while coordinating the ground defenses. The news wasn't good, but it wasn't as bad as expected either. "The human ships are lasting longer than our projections," reported his aide. "They're using tactics we've never seen before." "That's because we've never fought a war like this before," Williams replied. "Our people up there are making it up as they go along." Back in space, the battle continued. The humans couldn't match the HFY in firepower, but they were doing things the aliens had never seen. Ships would pretend to be disabled, then explode when enemy vessels came close to capture them. Human crews would abandon their ships and use the life pods as improvised missiles. Dr. Sam Rodriguez was analyzing the battle from his lab when he noticed something interesting. "Admiral Carter," he called, "I'm seeing a pattern in the HFY. Weapon systems. Their targeting computers seem to predict where our ships will go, but they're wrong about half the time." "What do you mean?" Carter asked. "Their computers are too smart. They calculate the most logical place for our ships to be, but our pilots aren't being logical. They're being creative, unpredictable. The HFY systems can't handle that." This gave Carter an idea. "All ships, this is the Admiral. Stop following standard combat patterns. Be unpredictable. Make random turns. Fire at unexpected times. Don't do what makes sense." The order sounded crazy, but the human pilots followed it. Soon, HFY ships were missing shots they should have made easily. On the death's edge, Zak Thul watched his tactical display with growing frustration. His ships should have destroyed the human fleet in minutes, but the battle had been going on for over an hour. He had lost 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. War Commander, Veltar reported, the humans are using their damaged ships as weapons. They're ramming our vessels instead of retreating. Impossible, Zaxthel snarled. No species fights like that. It's wasteful, illogical, but the evidence was right in front of him. A human ship with half its hull blown away was currently flying straight at one of his destroyers. The human ship exploded just before impact, but the explosion damaged the destroyer's engines. Amy Brooks was down to 5 fighters from her original 12. Her own ship was barely holding together, but she wasn't done fighting. Gold Squadron, we're going to try something new, she announced. Follow me to the asteroid field. The asteroid field near Titan was full of mining equipment and loose rocks. Amy had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. She led her fighters into the asteroids, with 3 Kethver ships following. The alien ships were much larger and had trouble maneuvering between the rocks. Now, Amy called out her fighters fired at the mining charges that were attached to several asteroids. The explosions sent huge chunks of rock flying toward the Kethver ships. The enemy vessels' shields could stop energy weapons, but they had trouble with physical objects moving at high speed. 2 of the 3 pursuing ships were heavily damaged. A third tried to retreat, but crashed into an asteroid. This is impossible, Zaxthel said, watching his ship struggle against an enemy that should have been defeated hours ago. The human tactics made no sense. They sacrificed ships to save other ships. They used their own equipment as weapons. They fought like they had nothing to lose. War Commander, his communications officer reported, we're receiving messages from the other fleets. Similar reports. From all fronts, the humans are difficult to predict. Zaxthel had conquered worlds with billions of inhabitants. He had faced species with advanced technology and powerful militaries. But he had never faced anything like this. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to make every victory cost the Kethver as much as possible. Every human ship that died took at least 1 alien ship with it. Every human pilot tried to cause maximum damage even when their ship was destroyed. Sub-Commander Veltar, Zaxthel ordered, pull our ships back to safe distance. We will bombard their station from long range. But even as he gave the order, Zaxthel felt something he had not felt in centuries of warfare. Doubt. The humans were not acting like any prey species he had encountered before. On Titan Station, Admiral Carter received the casualty reports. 28 human ships destroyed, but they had taken out 19 Kethver vessels. Against impossible odds, they had fought the enemy to a standstill. Admiral, her communications officer reported, were getting word from the other colonies. Similar results everywhere. The Kethver are winning, but it's costing them much more than they expected. Carter nodded. The plan was working. They couldn't defeat the Kethver Empire, but they could make the aliens pay a heavy price for every victory. Amy Brooks landed her damaged fighter on Titan Station. She had started the day with 12 pilots under her command. Only 4 had survived, but as she climbed out of her fighter, she saw something that made her smile. The maintenance crews were already working on the damaged ships, preparing them for the next battle. And new pilots were arriving from Earth, ready to take the place of those who had died. The Kethver thought they were hunting weak prey, but they had found something else entirely. They had found humans who refused to be prey, who turned every defeat into a lesson, and who would rather die fighting than live as slaves. The war was just beginning, and already the predators were learning that their prey had teeth. War Commander Zaxthel stared at the tactical display showing Earth. The blue planet looked peaceful and defenseless, but he had learned not to trust appearances when it came to humans. After 2 weeks of fighting, his fleet had lost over 60 ships. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. Begin the final assault, he ordered. All ships target their major cities. We will end this quickly. But Admiral Lisa Carter had been preparing for this moment. As the Kethver fleet moved toward Earth, hundreds of small ships launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. These weren't military vessels. They were cargo ships, passenger transports, even mining vessels. All of them had been converted into weapons. All civilian volunteers. This is Admiral Carter, she broadcast. Remember, your job is to cause confusion and buy time for our main forces. Every second you give us saves lives. Captain Jake Morrison was leading one of these volunteer groups. His ship, the New Horizon, had been fitted with extra armor and weapons. Behind him flew 20 other converted civilian ships. This is crazy, his first officer Amy Brooks said. She had been promoted after her heroic actions at Titan Station. We're flying cargo ships against warships. Crazy has been working for U.S. so far, Jake replied. He watched as the massive Kethvar fleet approached Earth. Besides, they won't expect us to attack with civilian ships. The first surprise came when the civilian ships didn't attack the Kethvar fleet directly. Instead, they flew to the space around Earth and began dumping cargo containers, fuel tanks, and metal debris into orbital paths. What are they doing? Sub-Commander Veltar asked, confused. Within minutes, the space around Earth was filled with thousands of pieces of junk, all moving at high speed. The Kethver ships had to slow down and carefully navigate through the debris field. Clever, Zach Thule admitted grudgingly. They're using our own momentum against us. But the real surprise came next. As the Kethver ships carefully moved through the debris field, the human civilian ships suddenly attacked from behind. They had been hiding among the junk, waiting for the perfect moment. Jake Morrison's ship rammed into the side of a Kethver destroyer. The impact destroyed both ships, but it also created a hole in the enemy formation that other human ships could exploit. On the ground, Colonel Pete Williams was coordinating the defense of major cities. But instead of setting up traditional defensive positions, he had turned entire city blocks into traps. Remember, he told his troops, when they land, don't try to fight them in open battle. Use the buildings, use the sewers, make them come to us. The Kethver had never fought urban warfare before. On other worlds, they would simply bombard cities from space until the inhabitants surrendered. But the humans had made that impossible. By filling Earth's orbit with debris and civilian ships, Dr. Sam Rodriguez was working frantically in his lab, studying pieces of Kethver technology that had been recovered from destroyed ships. He had made an important discovery. Admiral Carter, he called. I figured out how their shields work. They're designed to stop energy weapons and large objects, but small, fast-moving projectiles can get through. What kind of projectiles? Carter asked. Anything dense and small. Ball bearings, metal fragments, even bullets from old-fashioned guns. This information was quickly passed to all human forces. Soon, ships were firing clouds of metal fragments at Kethver vessels, and the alien shields couldn't stop them all. The battle for Earth was unlike anything the Kethver had ever experienced. Human ships attacked from every direction, using tactics that seemed impossible. A damaged freighter would suddenly explode next to a Kethver cruiser. Small fighter ships would attach themselves to larger enemy vessels and explode. Amy Brooks was now commanding a mixed squadron of military fighters and converted civilian craft. Her target was a Kethver command ship that was trying to coordinate the invasion. Listen up, she told her pilots. We're going to board that ship. Board? It? One pilot asked. How? We're going to crash into their landing bay and fight our way to the bridge. It was an insane plan, but it worked. Amy's fighters flew directly into the hangar of the enemy ship. Half of them were destroyed in the landing, but the survivors fought their way through the ship's corridors, The Kethver had never fought humans in close combat before. They discovered that humans were smaller, but faster, and they fought with a ferocity that was terrifying. Human soldiers used knives, clubs, and even their bare hands when their guns ran out of ammunition. They fight like wild animals, one Kethvar warrior reported to his commander, but it wasn't just animal fury. The humans fought smart. They used the ship's own systems against the crew, sealing doors to trap enemies and cutting power to important areas. Amy Brooks reached the bridge of the Kethver ship with only 3 other humans. They were facing 12 alien warriors each, one twice their size and heavily armed. "Surrender," the alien commander demanded. "You cannot win." Amy smiled and held up a small device. "This is a human invention called plastic explosive. If I press this button, it will blow a hole in your ship's hull. We'll all die, but your ship will be destroyed too." The alien commander stared at her. "You would kill yourself just to stop us?" "If that's what it takes," Amy replied. The Kethver commander had never met anyone willing to die just to hurt an enemy. After a long moment, he dropped his weapon. "I surrender." Similar scenes were happening throughout the battle. Human forces that should have been easily defeated were fighting with such determination that they were winning against impossible odds. On his flagship, Zach Thal watched his invasion force being destroyed piece by piece. He had started with over 400 ships. Now he had less than 200, and the humans were still fighting. "War Commander," Veltar reported, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 of our ships. The humans have boarded them." "How? Is that possible?" Zach Thal demanded. "Our ships are protected by shields and armor. They're not trying to break through our defenses," Veltar explained. "They're flying directly into our ships and fighting inside them." This was beyond anything in Kethver military doctrine. No civilized species fought by deliberately crashing into enemy ships. It was wasteful, dangerous, and completely irrational. But it was working. Colonel Williams was coordinating ground battles in 12 major cities. The Kethver had managed to land troops in several locations, but they were having trouble controlling any territory. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "the aliens have taken the government building in New York." "Good," Williams replied. "Execute plan rat trap." Moments later, explosions rocked the government building. The humans had filled it with explosives before abandoning it. The Kethver troops inside were trapped in a collapsing structure. This pattern repeated across Earth. The Kethver would take a building or a city block, only to discover that the humans had turned it into a weapon. Buildings would explode, bridges would collapse, and underground tunnels would flood. Dr. Rodriguez made another breakthrough when he successfully hacked into a captured Kethver computer system. "Admiral," he called excitedly, "I'm into their communications network. I can see their tactical data." "What are they planning?" Carter asked. "That's just it," Rodriguez replied. "They don't seem to have a plan anymore. Their commanders are arguing with each other. Some want to retreat, others want to bring in more ships." The truth was that the Kethver Empire had never faced resistance like this. On other worlds, they would defeat the local military, and the population would surrender. But humans seemed to get more determined as the fighting continued. Captain Morrison, who had survived his ramming attack by ejecting at the last second, was now leading a group of salvage crews who were recovering Kethver technology from destroyed ships. "Look at this," he told Dr. Rodriguez, showing him a piece of alien equipment. "Their weapons are incredibly advanced, but they're not designed for the kind of fighting we're doing." "What do you mean?" Rodriguez asked. "They're built for long-range, precise combat between large ships. But we're fighting up close, using small ships and improvised weapons. Their technology is too sophisticated for this kind of war." It was a crucial insight. The Kethver had built their military to fight other organized militaries. They had no experience dealing with enemies who fought like humans, creative, desperate, and willing to sacrifice everything for victory. As the battle for Earth entered its third day, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in 1,000 years, a Kethvar invasion was failing. Not just slowed down or delayed, but actually failing. Zackthul stood on his bridge, looking at the tactical display. Earth was still there, still fighting. His fleet was battered and demoralized. And worst of all, he was starting to understand something that terrified him. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were learning from every battle, adapting their tactics, and getting stronger. Each defeated human ship taught the survivors something new. Each lost battle became the foundation for the next victory. "Sub-Commander Veltar," he said quietly, "send a message to High Command. Tell them we need reinforcements." "How many ships, War Commander?" Zackthul looked at the blue planet that had cost him so much. "All of them," he said. "Send every ship in the Empire. Because if we don't stop the humans here, I don't think we'll be able to stop them anywhere." For the first time in his long 6 months had passed since the first Kethvar attack on Earth. What had started as a simple conquest had become the Empire's worst nightmare. News of the human resistance was spreading across the galaxy, and on dozens of worlds, the Kethvar were facing something they had never encountered before. Rebellion. Dr. Sam Rodriguez stood in his laboratory, looking at his latest creation. It was a human fighter ship, but it didn't look like any ship Earth had ever built before. The hull was covered with Kethvar armor plating. The weapons were a mix of human and alien technology. The shield generators were completely redesigned. "It's beautiful," Admiral Lisa Carter said, walking into the lab. "How many can we build?" "With the factories we've captured, maybe 50 by next month," Rodriguez replied. "Each one is as powerful as a Kethvar cruiser, but small enough to be fast and hard to hit." The war had changed both sides. The humans had learned to use captured alien technology, while the Kethvar had been forced to adapt to human tactics. But the humans were adapting faster. Captain Jake Morrison was now commanding a fleet of 30 ships, all of them crewed by humans and freed alien prisoners. His flagship was a captured Kethvar vessel that had been completely rebuilt with human modifications. "Captain," his communications officer called, "we're receiving a message from the Zephyrian refugees." Jake smiled. The Zephyrians were one of several species that had been conquered by the Kethvar decades ago. When human forces had liberated their prison ships, they had eagerly joined the fight against their former captors. "Put them through," Jake ordered. The alien face that appeared on the screen looked somewhat like a tall, thin human, but with blue skin and 4 arms. "Captain Morrison," the Zephyrian commander said, "our scouts have found a Kethvar supply depot in the Vega system. It's heavily defended, but if we could capture it, we'd have enough weapons and fuel to equip 100 more ships," Jake finished. "I like it. When do we attack?" This was how the war had evolved. Instead of defending Earth and waiting for the enemy to come to them, human forces were now attacking Kethvar positions throughout nearby space. Each victory brought more freed prisoners, more captured technology, and more allies. Sub-Commander Veltar sat in his quarters on the Death's Edge, reading intelligence reports. The news was bad and getting worse. In the past month, human forces had destroyed 6 Kethvar supply bases, freed over 10,000 alien prisoners, and captured enough ships to double their fleet size. But what worried Veltar most was something else he had noticed. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to free other species. Every time they captured a Kethvar prison ship or slave transport, they freed the prisoners and offered them a chance to join the fight. "Not trying to conquer us," Veltar realized. "They're trying to liberate everyone we've ever conquered." This was a problem the Kethver Empire had never faced. Their strength came from fear. Other species obeyed them because resistance seemed hopeless. But now, resistance had a face. It had a name. It was human. Amy Brooks, now promoted to wing commander, was leading the attack on the Vega Supply Depot. Her squadron included human fighters, converted civilian ships, and several alien vessels crewed by former Kethver prisoners. "Remember," she told her pilots, "we go in fast and hit hard. The depot has heavy defenses, but they're designed to stop large fleets, not small, fast attacks." The attack began with a classic human tactic that the Kethver still couldn't counter effectively. Instead of approaching in formation, the human ships came from 12 different directions at once. Each ship followed a different flight path, making it impossible for the defenders to predict where they would be. The Kethver defense commander tried to coordinate his response, but every time his weapons locked onto one human ship, 3 others would appear from a different direction. It was like trying to swat flies with a hammer. "All ships, execute Plan Chaos," Amy ordered. The human ships suddenly broke into even smaller groups and began doing things that made no tactical sense. Some ships flew directly at the station's weapons, then turned away at the last second. Others fired their weapons at empty space, then changed course completely. But there was a method to the madness. While the defenders were confused by the seemingly random attacks, human engineers were studying the station's defense patterns. Every shot the Kethver fired told the humans something about their weapon systems. "Got it," Amy's tactical officer announced. "Their main guns have a 3-second recharge time, and they can't target anything closer than 1 kilometer. Amy smiled. "All ships, close formation attack. Get in close and stay there." The human ships swarmed the station like angry bees, too. Close for the main guns to hit them, but close enough for their own weapons to be effective. Within an hour, the station's defenses were destroyed, but the real prize wasn't the station's weapons. It was the intelligence data stored in the station's computers and the 300 alien prisoners held in the detention cells. Among the freed prisoners was someone very special, a Kethver scientist named Vekmer, who had been imprisoned for questioning the Empire's methods. "You are the humans I have heard about," Vekmer said when he met Jake Morrison. "The ones who turn defeat into victory." "We're just people who don't like bullies," Jake replied. "Would you be willing to help us understand Kethver technology better?" Vekmer looked around at the mixed group of humans and aliens working together to repair ships and plan their next mission. "Yes," he said finally, "I will help you. The Empire has forgotten that strength comes from unity, not fear." Meanwhile, on dozens of Kethver-controlled worlds, the news of human victories was inspiring uprisings. Species that had been enslaved for generations were remembering what freedom meant. Colonel Pete Williams was now coordinating resistance movements on 6 different worlds. Using human-developed communication systems, he helped local populations organize guerrilla attacks against their Kethver occupiers. "The key," he explained to a group of rebel leaders via encrypted transmission, "is not to fight the battles. They want you to fight. Don't try to match their strength. Use your knowledge of your own world against them." On the mining world of Kepler 438b, the local population followed Williams' advice. Instead of attacking Kethver forces directly, they sabotaged the mining equipment and contaminated the fuel supplies. The Kethver garrison found themselves stranded on a hostile world with no way to call for help. War Commander Zakthul stood before the High Council of the Kethver Empire, explaining how a simple conquest had become a galactic rebellion. "The humans are not like other species," he reported. "They adapt to every situation. They learn from every defeat. And worst of all, they inspire other species to fight." "How many ships have you lost?" asked the High Commander. "Over 400, Zakthul admitted. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is that every ship we lose makes them stronger. They capture our technology, free our prisoners, and turn them into allies. The High Commander's face showed anger. You are telling me that a primitive species from one small world is defeating the greatest empire in the galaxy? They're not primitive anymore, Zakthul replied. They've learned to use our own technology against us. And they've united dozens of species under one cause, the destruction of our empire. This was the truth that the Kethfer leadership didn't want to face. For 1,000 years, they had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. But the humans had shown other species that the Kethfar could be beaten. Dr. Rodriguez was working with Ekmer and scientists from 6 different species to develop new weapons and ship designs. The mixing of different technologies and ideas was producing results that none of them could have achieved alone. Look at this, Rodriguez said, showing the group a new type of shield generator. We combined human adaptive programming with Kethfer energy technology and Zephyrian crystal matrices. The result is a shield that gets stronger the more it's attacked. Impossible, Ekmer said, studying the data. Kethfer science says that energy cannot be recycled like that. Human science says a lot of things are impossible until someone does them, Rodriguez replied with a smile. The new technology was quickly installed on human ships. When the Kethfer attacked, they discovered that their weapons were actually making human shields stronger instead of weaker. Amy Brooks was testing one of the new ships when a Kethfer patrol found her squadron. They're firing on us, her gunner reported. Let them, Amy said calmly. Watch the shield readings. As the enemy weapons hit the human ship, the shield power increased instead of decreasing. After a few minutes, the human shields were so strong that the ship was practically invulnerable. Now it's our turn, Amy said. Return fire. The Kethver patrol was destroyed in minutes. But more importantly, the surviving enemy ships reported back to their commanders that human technology was becoming more advanced than their own. Captain Morrison was leading a major operation to attack the Kethver stronghold in the Centauri system. His fleet now included over 200 ships from a dozen different species, all working together under human coordination. This is it, he told his commanders. If we can take Centauri, we'll have a base close enough to threaten Kethver space directly. The battle for Centauri lasted 3 days. The Kethver defenders were well prepared and HIV. 1 year after the first Kethvar attack on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Liberation. The ship was a perfect example of how the war had changed everything. It had started as a Kethver dreadnought, but human engineers had rebuilt it completely. Now it was faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the Empire had ever built. Captain, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 6 more Kethver commanders. Jake nodded. It was happening more and more often now. Kethvar officers were choosing to surrender rather than fight a war. They couldn't win. The Liberation fleet that surrounded Jake's ship was massive. Over 800 vessels from 23 different species, all united under the banner of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. What had started as Earth's desperate defense had become a crusade to free every enslaved world in the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Carter was coordinating the final offensive from Earth. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. A direct attack on Kethethara Prime, the homeworld of the Kethver Empire. Are you sure about this? Dr. Sam Rodriguez asked her. Their homeworld will be the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. That's exactly why we have to attack it, Carter replied. As long as the Empire's leadership believes they're safe, they'll keep fighting. We need to show them that nowhere is beyond our reach. The technology gap that had once favored the Kethvar had completely reversed. Human scientists, working with allies from dozens of species, had created weapons and ships that were generations ahead of anything the Empire possessed. Amy Brooks, now promoted to Admiral, was leading the advance fleet toward Kethethara Prime. Her ships moved through space using new propulsion systems that bent the laws of physics in ways the Kethver couldn't understand or counter. Enemy fleet detected, her tactical officer reported. 200 ships approaching from the third. Moon, only 200? Amy asked. A year ago, they would have sent 1,000 ships to stop us. The truth was that the Kethver Empire was running out of ships, crews, and most importantly, worlds willing to fight for them. The liberation of enslaved species had created a cascade effect. Each freed world inspired others to rebel, and each rebellion weakened the Empire's ability to respond to the next uprising. War Commander Zakthul stood in the command center on Kethethara Prime, watching the tactical display as human. Forces approached his homeworld. The irony wasn't lost on him. A year ago, he had been the hunter, approaching Earth with overwhelming force. Now he was the prey, watching an unstoppable enemy close in on everything he had sworn to protect. War Commander Subcommander Veltar reported, "The defense fleet is requesting orders." Zakthul looked at the display. The human fleet was enormous, and it included ships from species that Kethvar had conquered centuries ago. Former slaves were now coming to destroy their former masters. "Tell the fleet to hold position around the planet," Zakthul ordered. "We make our stand here." But even as he gave the order, Zakthul knew it was hopeless. The humans had done something no enemy had ever managed. They had turned the Empire's own strength against it. Every conquered species, every enslaved world, every act of cruelty had created an enemy that was now coming for revenge. The battle for Kethethara Prime began at dawn. The human fleet didn't attack in the massive formation that the Kethvar expected. Instead, they used the same tactics that had worked so well throughout the war. Small, fast groups attacking from every direction. But this time, there was something different. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Kethvar fleet. They were trying to capture it. "Attention Kethvar vessels," Admiral Brooks broadcast on all frequencies. "We offer you the same choice we've offered every enemy fleet. Surrender now, and you will be treated with honor. Continue fighting, and you will be destroyed." It was an offer the Kethvar had never made to their enemies. They had always demanded unconditional surrender or total destruction. But the humans were offering something that had never existed in galactic warfare before: mercy. One by one, Kethvar ships began to surrender. Their crews had heard the stories from other battles. Human prisoners were treated well, fed properly, and given medical care. Many were even offered the chance to join the Liberation Fleet and fight against their former empire. Colonel Pete Williams was leading the ground assault on the planetary capital. His forces included human marines, Zephyrian warriors, and soldiers from a dozen other liberated species. But they weren't coming to destroy the city. They were coming to free it. "Remember," Williams told his troops, "we're not here to conquer. We're here to liberate. That includes liberating the Kethvar people from their own government." This was the revolutionary idea that had made the human liberation successful. Instead of replacing one empire with another, they were offering freedom to everyone, even their former enemies. The ground battle was fierce but brief. The Kethvar military was designed to fight organized armies, not the mixed species guerrilla forces that the humans had perfected. Within hours, liberation forces had surrounded the imperial palace. Inside the palace, the High Command of the Kethvar Empire was meeting for the last time. The High Commander looked around the table at his advisors, seeing defeat in every face. "How did this happen?" he demanded. "How did one primitive species destroy an empire that has lasted 1,000 years?" "They didn't destroy us," War Commander Zakthul said quietly. We destroyed ourselves. We built our empire on fear and cruelty. And eventually, someone came along who wasn't afraid. The High Commander slammed his fist on the table. I will not surrender to inferior beings. Then you will die, Zakthul replied. But I won't let our entire species die with you. Before anyone could stop him, Zakthal activated his personal communicator and sent a message to the human forces outside. This is War Commander Zakthul. I wish to discuss terms of surrender. A meeting took place in the Imperial throne room. Captain Morrison, Admiral Carter, and Colonel Williams represented the liberation forces. Across from them sat Zakthul and several other Kethfer commanders. Before we begin, Morrison said, I want you to understand something. We're not here to destroy your people or take your worlds. We're here to end the empire that has enslaved half the galaxy. Zakthul studied the human faces across from him. A year ago, he would have killed them without a second thought. Now he was asking for their mercy. What are your terms? He asked Admiral. Carter spoke first. All enslaved species must be freed immediately. All conquered worlds must be given the choice of independence or membership in the new Galactic Alliance. War criminals will be tried by courts made up of representatives from all affected species. And what happens to the Kethfer people? Zakthul asked. You'll be free too, Morrison replied. Free to choose your own government, your own future. Free to join the Alliance if you want, or to remain independent. It was not what Zakthul had expected. Throughout history, conquerors had always enslaved or destroyed the people they defeated. But the humans were offering something unprecedented. True freedom for everyone. There is one more thing, Colonel Williams added. We want you to help. U.S. find and free any remaining prisoners in the Empire's territory. You know where they are. Help us save them. Sub-Commander Valtar stepped forward. I will help, he said. I have spent years watching our empire commit atrocities. I want to make amends. The formal surrender ceremony took place 3 days later. Representatives from over 50 species attended, including many who had been enslaved by the Kethor for generations. But the most significant moment came when Admiral Carter made an announcement that shocked everyone present. The Galactic Liberation. Alliance will not become a new empire, she declared. Instead, we propose the formation of a true democratic alliance where all species have equal representation and equal rights. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been working with scientists from dozens of species, added, We've learned that the greatest discoveries come from cooperation, not conquest. Together, we can explore the galaxy and unlock secrets that no single species could discover alone. 6 months after the surrender, Jake Morrison was captain of the first joint species exploration vessel, the Unity. His crew included humans, Kethvar, Zephyrians, and representatives from a dozen other species. Captain, his science officer, a former Kethvar researcher, reported, We're detecting signs of an ancient civilization in this system. The technology appears to be more advanced than anything we've seen before. Jake smiled. This was what the future looked like. Not conquest and slavery, but exploration and discovery. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and now all of its peoples were free to explore them together. Amy Brooks had been elected as the first president of the Galactic Council. Her first act was to establish a memorial for all the victims of the Kethvar Empire, including the Kethvar themselves, who had died fighting for freedom. War Commander Zakthul had resigned his military commission and now worked as an advisor to the Council, helping to integrate former Kethvar worlds into the new alliance. He often thought about the irony of his situation. He had set out to conquer a weak species and had ended up being conquered by their ideas about freedom and cooperation. He had also discovered something important. Being conquered by the humans wasn't a defeat. It was a liberation. Foe